What's up, my precious little pack, and welcome back to VEGA Conflict. We're not going to talk about anything major in today's video. I actually have a different idea, and it actually revolves around the Dreadnought class ships now that they've been introduced. And it's actually a starting point for Kickside to help balance out lower tiers without actually going back and reworking them, and a way of them continuing on making new content. Beginning with a researchable Tier 4 Minor Rebellion class Dreadnought that I'm just going to nickname the Rebellion for now, for obvious reasons. They should have the exact same fitting that the higher tier brothers have, Dreadnought class for Dreadnought class. However, the researchable Dreadnought should be the weakest because it is the Minor Rebellion. They're what kicks everything off. Stats-wise, statistically, and everything like that, the slots should be the exact same as the bigger brother, which would be the Umbra one, which is this guy. And I wish I could actually show the fitting off, but I know for a fact, thanks to the ship calc and Mr. Top Gear, that when a fully markup graded Dreadnought is fitted, it has access to 4 ablative slots, 3 armor slots, or 4 armor slots. I can't remember, I wasn't paying that much attention because I was just having a good time fitting it. 8 weapon slots, 2 squadron slots, 4 special slots, and 2 resistance slots. I think that the introduction of low-tier researchable carriers should have a different way of markup grading it than ships we've had thus far, and it should actually implement the idea of using up other patterns to markup grade. In this case, since the Dreadnought class vessels are a combination of a cutter, a battleship, and a cruiser, I think that it should take patterns from all 3 and it should be researchable markup grades again, so going back to the researchable thing just for this researchable one. The others will actually be earnable through a campaign system, and this is just a concept idea for Kickside to think over, and yes, I will be sharing the link to this on the forum, and it's just going to be most likely tiled in the forum in the general section, or the ideas section. It will be commented and it will be added for most likely whatever reason. I'll think of the name after this video, or the title of it. But for now, the idea is the introduction of the Dreadnought class vessels through the tiers. And no, I'm not telling Kickside to stop producing new tiers, or new ships either. Because with the introduction of the Dreadnought carrier, well, the Dreadnought, period, we actually have something different, and I actually like it, and this is the type of content that I would like to have added to the game. And adding Dreadnoughts to the lower tiers, along with continuing the high tier advancement over time, it'll allow lower tiers to have something to help balance out PvP to some degree, as well as actually fight a little bit more efficiently and continue to advance at a rate that is more suiting to them. The Dreadnought is more of a generous class ship than even the generalists. Well, I mean the specialists. In the fact that it is a partial carrier in the later markup grades, Mark 5 and Mark 6, specifically for the Behemoth, it gains access to its 2 squadron slots at those 2 levels respectively. And I think that each one should be able to have the exact same fitting, but change the fittings around a little bit to match these ships, or more specifically, the tiers they represent. And since Kickside introduced this Dreadnought, I think that the Rebellion should be a little bit more like this, and yes, I'm still going to use that nickname for the Rebellion, or the Rebel Minor group, for their Dreadnought, and I think you should have 6 weapon slots instead of 8, but come stock with 2 squadron slots, and then gain 2 more as its markup grade to Mark 6, and yes, I think that each Dreadnought should be upgraded to Mark 6. Along with that, they should all receive the benefits that has been displayed upon the Ultimate Dreadnought, which is the highest tier Dreadnought in the game as of right now, which is the Behemoth. And that is, they should be given access to, at level 1, the exact same stat bonuses that the Behemoth has, with the exception of they should remove certain aspects of it for their tiers, so if normal ships wouldn't have it. So let's just quickly go over the Behemoth. The stats I'm talking about are actually the modifiers. 1, They should not have increased Altarian damage until they're Umbra, which is what this one is. They shouldn't have an active ability until they achieve a Altarian Dreadnought. Stasis resistance, all of them should have that, and then the ablative and the standard resistance should be done away with, so the only thing that you'd really get for the lower level ones would be armor, damage per second, shield bypass, and stasis. But what makes them different is they should have different fittings for each one. So the Rebellion, it'd be the little brother to them all, and it would have the greatest fighter support, which would mean that it could equip the largest number of squadrons out of each one. However, the others may be heavier and have more weaponry on board. However, the one thing that would make the Rebellion unique is the fact of its weight. I was actually thinking for it, since it would be the little baby brother to every other Dreadnought in the game, just like how the Midgard is the little baby brother to the Ragnarok, we would have something similar. So we would have a Dreadnought that is so lightweight that a max level base would be able to put and use 2 of them in its bay. So if a player decides for some reason to spend hundreds of dollars on their base and research everything, they'd be able to produce 2 Dreadnoughts via the researchable aspect, completely mark upgrade them, provided they have all of the necessary mark upgrades for their respective tier. And I'll actually explain it a little bit further in just a minute. But it would be a little bit more entertaining to have a few more Dreadnoughts. The higher tier Dreadnoughts from tier 5 and above, as well as for the tier 4 VEGA Dreadnought, and yes, there will be 2 tier 4 Dreadnoughts, except for one will be weaker than the other because it represents the Rebellion, and it would be their first, as I'm going to call it, their first fully and wholly made and produced Rebel tech that wasn't a copy of another. Aesthetically, I'm actually going to compare it to a few other ships that I actually like. The first and foremost that I would like to actually have it look like is the Punisher. A greatly enlarged version of the Punisher, just with wings on both sides and a few changes here and there, so it's not a more or less scaled up version of the Punisher, but it's aesthetically different, but it looks enough like it, because I actually love the look of the Punisher more than just about every other ship where they're a complete copy on both sides, where the Punisher, it isn't. It's just a model that actually breaks that standard more or less to a degree. But it would be nice to see a greatly enlarged Punisher, effectively, that's been remodeled, become the new Dreadnought that is researchable at tier whatever. Tier 4 for the Rebellion, the name of the ship would be the Rebellion. Description of the ship could be anything from the greatest the greatest rebel scientists come together or came together to produce this, the offspring of the minor rebellion in its true form. Unity and strength are shown through this ship as well as its twin, and that represents, and that would be the little play on the words of a high level player would be able to use 2 of them in a fight. However, I wouldn't recommend using them against high level targets because you wouldn't have alien resistance, stuff like that. You'd have armor and shielding, and that'd be about it. One thing I would change about them is make it so that they can regenerate shielding at the lower levels, but make it so it's constantly active, similar to the Sovereign. However, to a much less degree. Make it so that they regenerate 2 to 5% of their shielding per second, or make it so it starts at 2 and gets upgraded to 6 or 10%. So you have to rely on shield bypass against the lower tier Dreadnoughts. Now, onto the mark upgrade system. How would it work for the researchable one? Well, I already know how it would work for all of the other vessels, as well as how to earn them, which I'll go over a little bit later still. How the researchable Dreadnought would be mark upgraded is through a system that actually implements and uses patterns we already have access to, and that is all tier 3 patterns for the corresponding tech. First off, Dreadnoughts are a combination, as I said at the beginning of the video, of cruisers, battleships, and cutters. So it should use a Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5 pattern. Well, it should actually use more of the high-level patterns to make the even higher level Dreadnought. So, to make a Mark 2 Dreadnought, a Rebellion, let's just say hypothetically, you would need one of, let's see. No, don't want that. You would need one Revelation cruiser Mark II pattern, one Fury Battleship Mark II pattern, and one, I believe it's the Taipan Cutter. Yes, and you would need one Taipan Cutter Mark II blueprint. And they'd go all the way up to their Mark IV to be able to produce up to the Mark IV of the ship. Now when it goes to Mark V and Mark VI, it will stop using the patterns for them, and instead it will rely on resources. And in that, what I mean is it will actually take resources that will be crafted similar to how you craft flagship armaments from different groups' armaments. It would take up Covenant Cruiser parts or other ships' parts. It would take up the Revelation, the Taipan, and the Fury Battleship parts respectively to be able to craft the mark upgrades for that one. So they wouldn't need a pattern, but they would require a large number of these other parts. However, it would gain the same benefits as the high-level Dreadnoughts do at their complete mark upgrade level at Mark 6, where they get 200% increased damage per second, 200% increased armor health, and have the shield bypass increased to 30%. It would be interesting to see them, to say the least, but it would be the most entertaining idea. Just let me know what all of you think about that. But that's going to be it for this little concept idea. If you guys like the idea, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, everybody, I'll see you later.